All right.
Yeah, I'd like to start out by introducing Sean Clark. Sean Clark and I have been working together for better than 5 years, and I'll tell you what, when I first met this guy, I thought the little asshole. But I'm going to tell you something. First impressions can be wrong. This guy is a superstar. He's a star in the making, and he's coming up. He's been working in oil and gas for 10 years, 12 years now?
10 and a half.
10 and a half. And when I met him, he was 5 years into I had just started my first program in offshore or onshore completions work, and he was an up-and-comer. And when I saw him and we started working together, it just clicked. This guy understands leadership. He understands what it means to learn, what to lead, to teach people, and future superstar company president right here in the making.
Oh, shit. That's hard to follow up. And I love how you jumped in before me, so I couldn't go. All right, so BK, Brian Kocher is how you pronounce it? I don't even know. So I've called BK since I've met him. Billy the Kid was your call sign.
Yeah.
Formerly went through Top Gun training, right?
I wasn't Top Gun.
You weren't?
No, I was test pilot.
Test pilot?
Yeah.
Flew planes.
You really don't know me, do you?
No, I don't. Flew planes. You can see all the patches on the wall. There's awards over here. ISIS Top 100 at one point, hit list. So I see you got stopped by what? Homeland Security or FBI or something?
Homeland Security, all those
Yeah,
guys.
weren't allowed to go in Italy on vacation. And to be honest, probably the guy that's made the biggest impact on my life since I've been 18 years old. Met you, like you said, 5 years ago. But not only gave me lessons as far as for my career, but just as life, working with people, dealing with people. Changed my whole perspective on how to interact with groups and people, and really gave me the tools. Very patient, awesome individual, and happy to be sitting here talking with you.
Yeah, great.
So, yeah.
Looking forward to talking, man. We always have good conversations.
Hell yeah.
With or without alcohol. All right, let's get on to the first one.
That's awesome. So round one.
Where do we start?
Okay, well, we're talking about the sheet here,
Yeah.
and you're saying that what industries are lacking or leadership that are gaps in industries working with today.
Mm-hmm.
So
here's, as prior military, one of the biggest comments I hear is, you don't know what it's like because military leadership is different.
okay.
Okay. And I think the challenge I submit to folks back when they ask me that is what do you think military leadership looks like? And more often than not, what they talk about is the drill sergeant.
Well, that's people's assumptions, right? From movies or anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, Full Metal Jacket, right?
Exactly. They see the drill sergeant with the brim down, yelling and spitting, and that's not what military leadership is at all. I mean, that's the classic breaking individuals down so that you can build them up and form a team. We're not at the stage where we're trying to break people down in business.
You already have a team. You already have a culture built.
Yeah.
Right?
You're just trying to get everybody working on the same page.
Yeah.
And so what companies tend to do is they tend to promote the guy with technical knowledge. They just assume that a guy with technical knowledge needs to be the guy in charge.
But that doesn't mean you can handle the people that you're paying to do the boots on the ground technical knowledge.
Not at all.
Yeah.
In fact, it's far from it. Their comfort zone is in the ones and zeros. It's in the formulas and the calculations and the problem solving. And how do I, when I come up with a field challenge, if you will, or an office challenge or whatever, it's okay. Let me, the boss, come up with a technical solution. Let me solve it, because that's what I'm good at, and that's why they promoted me. So that's where I'm going to focus most of my time.
But that sets up micromanaging, right?
Absolutely.
A lot of difficulty for the people with boots on the ground to be able to do their job.
Yeah. So, because what does the boss want to do now? He wants to call and challenge your technical solution with his technical solution, right? Isn't that what they do typically?
A lot of times, yeah.
I mean, some are better. don't get me wrong, some are better than others. Some will, some will recognize where they are and they'll let you solve it. But still, their comfort zone is, how do I continue to display my abilities by solving technical problems?
Well, that's because of what they were used to before that, probably too,
Absolutely.
right? So, if you're in management, right? You went from a highly technical job into one where you're managing people. I mean, I know it's hard, job dependent, but I mean, how much time do you really spend on building those people, those relationships, those teams, versus handling the actual technical issues?
Yeah. Well, let me start by, let's make sure we can't use management and leadership interchangeably. Okay,
Yes.
They're not the same thing. You're not managing people unless all you're caring about is their schedule and their pay and their performance evaluation. When you're solving or building team behaviors, you're leading them. And that's, I think, another piece that corporate leadership forgets, is there is a difference between managing and leading. When you're managing, you're dealing with stuff, okay, boxes and widgets and schedules and pay. But when you're leading, now you're dealing with things like diversity, challenging communication. Yeah, exactly. Getting people to talk to each other, as opposed to just having personality conflicts.
Getting an alignment,
Yeah.
buy-in from a whole group,
Right.
versus, and a lot of those structures, though, right? It's management. There's been an idea, you get promoted, and you say, all right, here's your list of stuff to do. Go get it done.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people have. That's what they've dealt with as far as bosses. So that's what they just roll back down.
Exactly. They just want they're managing tasks. I got 10 things I got to get done. Who am I going to get to do it? That's not leadership. That's just because you tell a guy to do a task does not mean you're leading them. You're just managing a task.
So how do you start? How do you make that change?
Well, first of all, we got to start teaching the leadership what leadership is, because they're confused. You're promoting them because of their technical challenge, technical expertise, but you're expecting them to lead when you've given them no leadership training whatsoever. I mean, you do have classes. Most organizations have a class here and there, or a startup program perhaps, or a refresher program somewhere in their career maybe. But not many have a continuous training or mentoring process.
But that's a big challenge, because if you think about people, they go to college for their career, so they focus on all that technical stuff, they do all that,
Yeah.
and then they literally, like you said, you get a 3-day class on leadership and that's it.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah.
But that's primarily your job, right?
Right.
And they would see a lot of times in a lot of businesses, and I'm sure you do, especially working with different businesses, where they don't have that ability to provide feedback on it or ongoing training.
Yeah, they don't. Well, they do, but they don't recognize where it is.
Okay.
Okay? First of all, you've got to build a process somewhere. You've got to get the resident knowledge somewhere, somehow. So up front, it's going to take some time. Okay? Take a guy like you, for example. You've been leadership mentored and coached now for how many years?
5-6 years.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the resident knowledge. You've got an understanding of what leadership is, what the skills are, what it takes to employ those skills. You have recognized that though you're a technical expert, you know where your time should be spent in problem solving, and it's with the people. It's not the technical challenge. Your companies hire other people for their technical knowledge. They don't hire leaders for their leadership ability. So you've got it, okay? So now the challenge is, how do you mentor others to be that leader? So you've got the ability now, and now so your company now has a resident, and now they've got to capitalize on what you know and what you do to help other people and mentor other people. So leaders, the pinnacle of leadership is when you're mentoring your subordinates, okay? When you're mentoring them to take your job. Now, that's not mean you're going to get fired. Okay, it just means that one day you're going to get promoted again.
But overall, that makes you more successful, your team more successful. But it's contagious too, right? And it's kind of, and also too, I feel like I've seen bad leaders, in my past, right? And we've had different coaching sessions, and you say, well, they're just reflecting on the leadership that they've had in the past. So even making an impression of what a good leader can have an impact, or a different culture that you have with young leaders or new leaders too.
Best question to ask somebody is, what's the best leader you had and why? And normally they'll tell you because he was smart. He was technically proficient. They won't talk about how he built teams and how he communicated, or, they'll say things like, they'll say things like, he gave it to me straight. Whenever he was there to correct me, and that's their version of what leadership looks like. When the reality is, good leaders figure out what to do with that mistake, not just slap you on the wrist for it.
Yeah.
Okay? And how to make that mistake a lesson.
How to empower you to avoid running down that again,
and teach it and build a process and look at the whole picture. And football, baseball, team sports is a microcosm of what businesses are. The same human dynamics exist. The same. You have technical challenges. You have people challenges. You have communication challenges, which is a people challenge. But they have a process in sports for how they eliminate the potential for human mistakes. Okay? Most businesses don't. Most businesses look at it as when a human mistake occurs, we're going to identify the source, which is the person. We're going to get rid of it. That solves our problem.
And that actually makes the work environment worse.
It's terrible.
It just grows, right?
Yeah.
It's funny.
Now everyone's what? Afraid to speak?
Yeah, they don't want to speak up.
Cover up the mistakes?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then it's not an open culture.
No.
Can't discuss anything. Everybody goes into hiding.
So.
And then they're negative. Then they're talking about the job.
Yeah.
Because they're fearful.
So that's a discussion all in itself, and we might want to think about that for a later day. Is we could talk for hours on how should a leader handle a mistake. What's a good way? What's a bad way? What's productive? What's non-productive? What builds a culture? What tears down a culture? So that's something we might want to just kind of really dig into at some point about how does a leader handle mistakes.
Well, first, even as we're talking now, just how even industries are even trying to identify leaders now.
Mm-hmm.
Because you said the struggle with developing them and all that. Are there certain tools that industries are using to identify leaders, or other than these trainings now that they're trying to build off of that? I know you've come in and you've done mentoring for me and whatnot, but
mentoring is the key. If a company really wants to build a leadership core, they need to start with a mentorship program or a consulting, coaching type approach where they can put a trained, skilled leader with the people they want trained and just immerse them in leadership for a year, 6 months, a period of time to where they can feel comfortable with some of the techniques, the situations. But to take a guy and put him in a position and say, now you're the leader, you're setting him up for failure.
Well, you're not doing that person justice either.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I learned early on in my career. You're talking
Mm-hmm.
about being technically proficient. Well, I kind of got to where I needed to be because of a boom, right? And
Yeah.
I was smart enough. I knew the right people. I worked hard for the
Timing,
right people.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I kind of fit into those places. And
Mm-hmm.
I when I first met you, I thought I had my shit together, right? Because I had gotten to this certain point, and it was really by hard work and right place, right time. And I never realized that, being a leader wasn't just because I knew how to do everything out there and pointing the finger. And it's funny because remember Snoop the one day?
Mm-hmm.
I remember we were talking, and he's like, you're pretty all right, dude. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, when I first met you, I thought you were an asshole. And it kind of reminds me of when we first met, though, and it's because at first I had that until I kind of broke down some of those walls of that tough, I'm in charge. And I actually started working together with those people, and we started to become a team.
Right.
And I'll never forget Snoop saying that. And that was right before I met you, and I think that was one of the biggest impacts on my career as a whole.
Yeah.
But
you'll hear, and because there's no training in some kind of standardized way of building a leader. Now, personalities, everyone's got a personality. Don't get me wrong. You're going to have a personality, but the tools and the traits are the same regardless of who you're talking about.
So but people say I got a different style or my personality. So what kind of guidance do you have for those people that are trying to build their leadership up and their
The first thing I would say is dispel what you think is leadership. If you really want to learn leadership, you need to open up your mind. I've heard it all. I've heard guys say, if I'm not pissing off my guys, I'm not doing my job. Okay, that's one leadership approach. That's not That's not a personality, that's a lack of a tool and skill, okay? I've heard the opposite of that. I'm just going to stay out of my guys' business. They know what to do. I'm going to let them do their jobs. That's another one, and you run the spectrum of different leadership styles, but the tools are the same. Okay, the tools are all the same. You've got to be able to communicate. You've got to have integrity. I think we've talked about that in the past. You've got to have integrity. They need to know they can trust you. And there is nowhere in the vernacular of leadership where technical expertise is a leadership trait. I challenge you. Look for it. You'll never find it.
Well, I think too, like with the teams that you build, you have, especially in what I do, you have so many people that technically know what they need to do. You're already surrounded yourself by subject matter experts that do it day in and day out. And I think one useful thing is sometimes if there's a situation, you just ask. Because you most of the time in work groups, you already have people that already have different solutions. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned in my career is sometimes that those people might not always have the fastest or the best solution, but sometimes it's better to let them solve it for you.
Oh yeah.
Because you win a lot more in the end. Because you win trust, right? Your team, they got buy-in, and when someone has an idea, they're very passionate about it. And they're going to take that to the bank.
Yeah, what kind of things have you done to coax that answer out of people? That the guy working for you knows the answer. How do you coax it out of him?
Just ask. What do you think?
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
But what does it take for him to actually give you an answer?
You have to create that relationship, environment where you can be open. You have an open door, or, you get to know your people.
Yeah. You've built the trust, right? You've got the communication, the rapport. And they know that they can give you the answer, right or wrong.
But that takes time.
It does.
You can't just, you just can't go in and say, hey, this is open door policy. You guys have any problems? Like, ask me. We're here to help each other. I think that takes, you can see it in different months, how those relationships grow. And as you can start, I think we've talked about bringing up different projects and getting teams to own them. And over time, like, this team's not ready for this or that. And once you build those relationships to a certain point, I think anything's really possible, right?
Yeah. But, getting back to the way companies hire leadership now or promote leaders, it's all on technical skill.
Yeah.
I've asked leaders in higher level positions in the offices, away from the field and away from the dirt, how much time do you spend on technical challenges? And they'll tell you 80 to 90% of my time. And that's because you said it earlier, and it's right on. When kids come out of college, what have they spent the last 4 years doing?
All technical stuff,
All
preparing
technical.
for that.
And in what manner? Mostly by themselves, right? And they've got to solve the problem, and they've got to have the answer. Well, they walk into the business world, and they think that's leadership.
They've never been taught as a group to work together, or...
Yeah, there are some college projects where you'll do a group thing, but it's rare. It's not the norm. It's the exception more than the rule.
And not in that kind of scope that you would see maybe in a potential work environment.
Yeah. And they're not there to lead that team in solving that challenge either. They're there to make sure that they get credit and
get their A and they move on. So they've kind of got a pre-existing condition that they're created to just
I call it the college project
problem.
mentality.
Yeah.
That's the way they come out of college, and I see it time and time again as companies target now the college graduates because they think they've got, they do have an ability to learn. They've demonstrated it. And just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you didn't figure out how to learn. It just means that they have demonstrated it in a short, quantifiable way that a company can go, okay, college degree, he's done it, he can go do it. Okay, so now the guy who's been in business for 10, 15 years, he's demonstrated some ability, so he gets promoted, as well. But the college project mentality is what most companies now are starting to promote, and it's short-sighted to think that's we don't have to invest in leadership.
Well, do you think some companies are catching on to that though? Now they're starting to have gaps in leadership just because of
yes, but think about it. The ones that are in leadership that are seeing the gaps are the technical experts. Okay. They're the first generation technical expert.
So they're kind of like continuing to
they're not sure how to get out of this
problem.
They're not sure how to get out of this. And so they've got to be awakened to understand that they need to reach out and find where leadership is. Bring it in, make it resident, and train your guys using that knowledge base. And once you're happy with your core train the trainer type group of people, all right, cut that loose, and now we start building that leadership culture. But most companies are reluctant to do that because that costs money, and they don't understand the benefits of it yet because again they're technical experts trying to figure out a leadership issue, a people problem.
Well, and it's kind of sometimes hard too to really measure leadership on paper. Wouldn't you agree? At the beginning.
Yes and no. Yes and no. We had metrics in the military that we considered to be leadership kind of measuring metrics.
Okay.
Retention, turnover, promotions.
People don't quit a job; they quit a boss.
That's right. Exactly. And so when you're keeping your people, when you're promoting the best, when you've got production, okay, you can have production, but when you have consistent production at the best possible rates, okay, now you've got leadership involved. I mean, you can have a company or a unit that can produce for a second or a week or a month, but then they have major incidents, and their performance does this instead of a nice steady,
So then they're steady at the helm, everything's good.
Yeah, they've got leadership. They know that things are going to be consistent because they have no kidding leadership. So there are metrics you can put in place to evaluate.
Okay.
I mean, companies don't consider. Well, they do. They think about retention from a dollar standpoint, but they don't recognize that as a leadership challenge. If you've got poor retention, you'll typically blame, well, the market's this or the economy is that, and so companies will look at retention or they'll look at turnovers and they'll think it's an external problem. It's driven by the markets or the people or the jobs. People are chasing dollars. Most people don't chase dollars.
No, it's more about that feeling, right, of comfort at work,
Yes.
support from your boss.
Security, comfort, support, love what I do. I don't get pissed off every time I go to work every day. And I know that when I get there, I'm going to be appreciated for what I contribute. That's what they care about.
People enjoy their bubble,
Yeah.
their comfort zone.
Yeah. I've seen kids, and I say kids because they were 18 to 25, 26, 30, live in the harshest conditions, under the worst circumstances, and get paid little or nothing, and love what they do. They're not chasing the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some are, don't get me wrong, but by and large, they want that feeling of satisfaction, and that's a leadership responsibility.
Nice.
Good?
Yep.